Victorian literature was obsessed with race, purity, contamination, degeneration, the decline of the species, the superiority of some types over others, eugenics, and so on. In many ways, Nazi Germany was the culmination of the concerns of Victorian England. The Nazis were highly influenced by Victorian English thinkers, who were typically every bit as racist, white supremacist, eugenicist, and anti-Semitic as the Nazis themselves. Many of the problems that afflict Africa in the present day were born in Victorian times when the Africans were subjected to white supremacist imperialism. The echoes of such attitudes are still prominent in the USA, as seen during Donald Trump's presidency. The world badly needs a great African culture to come to the fore and release all the pent-up potential of young Africans, who are clearly itching to make the most of themselves, in their own terms. They need to interact with their Mana personalities, their archetypes of power and wisdom, and shake off all traces of colonialism. But they also need to avoid the pitfalls of the Mana game. Jung wrote, "Those of my readers who know Rider Haggard's description of She Who Must Be Obeyed will surely recall the magical power of this personality. She is a Mana personality, a being full of some occult and bewitching quality, Mana, endowed with magical knowledge and power. All these attributes naturally have their source in the naive projection of an unconscious self-knowledge which, expressed in less poetic terms, would run somewhat as follows: I recognize that there is some psychic factor active in me which eludes my conscious will in the most incredible manner. It can put extraordinary ideas into my head, induce in me unwanted and unwelcome moods and emotions, lead me to astonishing actions for which I can accept no responsibility, upset my relations with other people in a very irritating way, etc. I feel powerless against this fact and, what is worse, I am in love with it, so that all I can do is marvel." Poets often call this the artistic temperament. Unpoetical folk excuse themselves in other ways. Wikipedia says, She, subtitled A History of Adventure, is a novel by the English writer H. Rider Haggard. She was extraordinarily popular upon its release and has never been out of print. The story is a first-person narrative which follows the journey of Horace Holly and his ward Leo Vinci to a lost kingdom in the African interior. They encounter a primitive race of natives and a mysterious white queen named Aisha who reigns as the all-powerful she or she who must be obeyed. Haggard developed many of the conventions of the Lost World genre which countless authors have emulated. Like many of Haggard's works, she is a vivid example of what is now labeled as imperialist literature. As such, the story embraces concepts of race and evolution, especially notions of degeneration, racial decline and racial purity, prominent in the late Victorian period and at the turn of the century, ideas whose influence would shape the 20th century. In The Figure of She, the novel notably explored themes of female authority and feminine behavior. Its representation of womanhood has received both praise and criticism. Submissive men love She. Margaret Thatcher, a monstrous Prime Minister of the UK, was often referred to as She Who Must Be Obeyed. One of the unspoken reasons for Thatcher's 3 election victories was that she was a dominatrix, of the bossy, pushy, school mistress type who brooks no opposition, no talking back, and many British men, posh and poor alike, are incredibly submissive and long to be dominated by authoritarian women, holding the whip hand. Queen Victoria, Britain's queen at the height of the power of the British Empire, was a black-clad dominatrix. The people of the UK loved having a queen because they are natural-born submissives. No dominant people would ever have a monarch as their head of state. Anyone who supports a monarch is declaring their identity as a submissive, seeking to be reigned over, ruled, dominated by others. Submissives are incredibly attracted to powerful, Mana figures. God is the supreme Mana figure. Muslims follow a religion called Islam, which is literally about submitting to the Muslim God, Allah, and his prophet, Muhammad. Every time a Muslim says, Muhammad, they are then obliged to say, peace be upon him. Candyman, Candyman, Candyman. Jews can't even write God and have to write G_D instead. How pathetic can you get? Jung wrote, now when the anima loses her mana, what becomes of it? Clearly the man who has mastered the anima acquires her mana, in accordance with the primitive belief that when a man kills the mana person he assimilates the other's mana into his own body. If you submit to God, God takes your power, leaving you powerless and pathetic. If you kill God, you take God's power. So, start polishing your daggers and loading your assault rifles. Nietzsche said, God is dead. God remains dead. And we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? What was holiest and mightiest of all that the world has yet owned has bled to death under our knives, who will wipe this blood off us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What festivals of atonement, what sacred games shall we have to invent? Is not the greatness of this deed too great for us? Must we ourselves not become gods simply to appear worthy of it? Nietzsche's Superman was higher than God because the Superman killed God. The highest God is all of us put together. We can then only kill ourselves by committing divine suicide. To psychologically kill something, you must integrate it. To psychologically empower something, you need only avoid it, deny it, repress it, project it, and so on. Jung wrote, well then, who is it that has integrated the anima? Obviously the conscious ego, and therefore the ego has taken over the mana. Thus the ego becomes a mana personality. But the mana personality is a dominant of the collective unconscious, the well-known archetype of the mighty man in the form of hero, chief, magician, medicine man, saint, the ruler of men and spirits, the friend of God. If you want to become a hero, a Superman, you must integrate the mana personality. You must want to be a hero, a Superman. Most people don't. Most people want to be led. As we said, they are instinctive submissives. Jung wrote, this masculine collective figure who now rises out of the dark background and takes possession of the conscious personality entails a psychic danger of a subtle nature, for by inflating the conscious mind it can destroy everything that was gained by coming to terms with the anima. It is therefore of no little practical importance to know that in the hierarchy of the unconscious the anima occupies the lowest rank, only one of many possible figures, and that her subjection constellates another collective figure which now takes over her mana. We are all involved in the Game of Thrones. To seize the crown, we must slay the rival claimants. Like the priests of Nemi, we must kill the old king to become the new king. Thomas Macaulay wrote, those trees in whose dim shadow the ghastly priest doth reign, the priest who slew the slayer, and shall himself be slain. The ego, to fully expand itself and become God, must slay every archetype and take their power and meaning. The threat the ego faces is twofold. 1. It can become possessed by the archetype and become positively inflated and megalomaniacal, or 2. It undergoes negative inflation and suffers extreme alienation and annihilation. We need to become wise magicians and sorcerers. We need to become knowers, not believers and not mystics. Jung said, actually it is the figure of the magician, as I will call it for short, who attracts the mana to himself, i.e., the autonomous valency of the anima. Only insofar as I unconsciously identify with his figure can I imagine that I myself possess the anima's mana. But I will infallibly do so under these circumstances. If you aspire to be a top magician or magus, you must become a master of the mana personalities, the personalities of wisdom and power.